Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic? Let's do it. Tell me your glitch in the Matrix stories. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
This will probably get buried. When I was around 20 a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora. I pronounced it Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason, her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up, and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, I'm in the car with a friend stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge onto a highway when I get a phone call from a random number. So I stopped the car, but no one answered. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second, they got on the highway. Some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Turns out the drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't have got that phone call. Called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. Rang 3 times and went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Aurora. Please leave your name and number. Never had goosebumps like that in my life. Called it again the next day because I was confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers, and we got to talking. I tell her my entire story, including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number, and that she never called me as far as she remembers. Weird. Asks her if she has a Facebook to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. Driving home on a stormy day, I see the side road up the local golf course is blocked off by flashing barricades. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricades with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light in the back seat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. To thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window and rap on the glass and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving, staring straight ahead. My window rapping or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch, or move. I look over, and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and require a code 2, no lights or sirens unit, up to my location to help me check them out. Doors are locked. While on the phone, I walk back to my truck to get my go bag. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, she asks me to get a license number for the car, just as a PG&E power company cherry picker truck comes rumbling down from up the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number, and the car is gone. I talked to the driver of the truck, and he said there was an 80-foot tree down across the road, and that he didn't think it'd be open for a day or so. So the question is, the hell did the car go? Tree up one way, barricades down the other. It kept me a bit unsettled when stopping at accidents or hazards since then. This happened to me in 3rd grade, and it scared me so much I started crying and had to go to my office to talk to the principal about it. I was in the hallway for misbehaving, and my neighbor Tad, a year younger than me, came walking out of a class to my right, passed in front of me, and headed down some stairs. We said hi to each other. About 20 seconds later, he walked out of the same class, passed in front of me, and headed down the stairs. I just stared at him, confused and afraid, and he looked back like, "Why the are you looking at me like that?" I never realized how much it was like a Matrix deja vu. At 12 years of age, my mom let me stay in the truck as she went grocery shopping. As I wait, I see an old guy walking toward the truck with an indescribable look at me, as if he knew too much. He stops 5 feet from the truck, looks at me for a couple of seconds, and heads back the exact way he came. It was rather traumatic for some reason, and very confusing at that age. 5 or 6 years later, my dad was showing me home videos of us at Yellowstone at Old Faithful. I noticed the same guy, same look, same clothes, peering at us on camera and at me through the TV. I'm freaked out just telling this. At a friend's place back in 2008. When we were all teenagers, we had a cool shed at a friend's that we'd hang out in every weekend. It had 4 sets of bunk beds, tables, a fireplace, TV, fridge, etc., the whole lot. One night, we were all hanging out in there when I decided I needed a piss. I walked out the front door of the shed and started to walk to the right, where I stopped. Now, let me explain the layout here. As you walk out of the shed, his house is to the left, and to the right is where we all parked our cars. Further out, you're left with empty fields and trees. It was dark by now, the lights from the house illuminating the space between the house and our cars, but trailing off just past them. As I took a step to the right, intending to go behind the cars to relieve myself, I saw my friend's older brother standing there. I watched him for a good 5 to 10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple of trees and a car before he disappeared. Confused, I walked back into the shed and asked my friend what his brother was doing by the cars. The conversation went as followed. Me: "Hey man, what's your brother doing by the cars?" Him: "What do you mean?" Me: "He just walked off behind the cars." Brother: "I'm right here." I looked over, and there his brother was, sitting down on one of the chairs with a drink. He was wearing the exact same clothes as I saw him in, and the only way to get into the shed was through the door that I was standing in the way of. To this day, I have no idea how it all happened. I'm guessing it was just seeing things, but the fact that I had watched him walk around for a good 10 seconds has always puzzled me. I've never had anything else like that happen. Oh man, I have one of these that involves the Matrix. I got my wisdom teeth out in 2000, right around the time that the original Matrix came out on VHS. I was bombed completely out of my mind on Percocet after coming back from the surgery. I had awful wisdom teeth. And my mom basically just dropped me in bed and went and rented the movie for me because I'd never seen it in theaters. I remember being irritated that the sun through the windows was making the TV glare, but being too out of it to get up. A little bit after the black cat glitch in the Matrix scene, I passed out and apparently slept for about 8 hours. The tape in the VHS machine kept rewinding itself and playing over and over again. I woke up and the movie was roughly at the same spot as when I passed out, but it was completely dark outside. 0 time lapse for me. Completely lost my mind. Started freaking out and screaming because I thought I'd discovered the secret and somebody turned off the sun. I remember crying and trying to explain to my panicked family, who have never let me live it down.
Not much to add here except that the glitch in the Matrix stories are some of my favorite topics here. I also really enjoy conspiracy theory ones and odd medical happenings, strange diagnosis, etc., which may be coming tomorrow. So stay tuned. Have a great day, guys.
My dad has this little toy monkey that he used to call his favorite child and tease me and my siblings with it. Not in a bad way, but it was really frustrating to us, and we spent hours trying to steal it from him. Well, anyway, one day we finally got it and threw it into the garbage after drawing on it and mangling it for a bit. We and my dad laughed and searched for it a bit, but basically figured we had thrown it out and gave up after a week or so. Anyway, A few years later, when I was about 17, I'm walking down the street in Toronto. I don't live in Toronto, was just visiting friends, and see what this large oxygen is, a little orange object on the side of the road. When I walk over to it, I pick it up and see that it was the exact same monkey. It even had the black Sharpie lines on it from when we drew all over it. I honestly cannot even come up with what the chances of that happening, especially considering our garbage is sent to a local dump and is nowhere near Toronto. I used to work in a building that had 3 levels of sub-basements. With the piece of lab equipment I typically worked on in the lowest basement, I had the only key. There was a wired phone in there, and it did work late some nights, but not this night. I was sleeping alone in my apartment when I woke up to a call on my cell phone from my girlfriend at 3 a.m. She was in hysterics and asking why I scared her. Apparently, she received a call from that basement phone just a minute earlier, with someone who sounded like me slowly repeating her name until crackling and fading out. My apartment was 10 miles away from work. I thought she was lying, but I saw the 3 a.m. call from the basement phone logged on her call myself. Still freaks me the f*** out. I have 2 stories that are just weird as. Both of them are things I just would not believe if someone else told me, but I can swear with every fiber of my being that they happened as I write them here. The first happened a couple years ago. I can't remember the occasion, but my mother and I had to go to A&W for lunch, and we were both sitting there eating our meals. We happened to be seated pretty close to the washroom doors, so I noticed everyone going in and out. First person to come out is this old man who's kind of hobbling along. He walked past, and I looked at him and went on with my meal. Not 30 seconds later, another man comes out of the bathroom, and at this point, I get a little freaked out because I realize it's the exact same person. Same limp, clothing, face, everything. A couple of minutes later, the same thing happens, except it's an old woman this time. She comes out, then 30 seconds later, comes right out of the bathroom again. My mom took a look at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I just kind of stammered a bit, then wrote it off as me being crazy. The next story is more weird, in my opinion, and is the single strangest occurrence of my life. This happened when I was about 9 years old, but I still remember it vividly. We were visiting family in Nevada with my dad, and they lived out in a very dry area in a fairly good-sized trailer. A couple days in, I was playing outside with my cousin, pretty much just messing around in the dirt. At some point, I look up. Right next to the house is a field, I guess, surrounded by wire fence, probably originally for livestock, but anyway, there's this guy standing there. This is a good 300 or more feet away, so I cannot see clearly at all. Cue the weird. As soon as I look at this guy, I have what I can only describe as an out-of-body experience. My body pretty much just went into lockdown, and I was no longer seeing through my eyes. And I wasn't just floating there or anything. I was in that man's body. Through his eyes, I could see 2 little shapes playing across the field, but I could just feel that he saw the shapes as animals. And then I realized he was holding a shotgun. After that, I regained my body and blurted out, "We have to go indoors," offering no explanation to my cousin, who thought I was nuts. I didn't tell anybody because I just didn't know how to express it to other people back then. I've only since told my brothers, but I don't think they believed me. It still freaks me out when I think about it today because it's the only time I've ever lost control of my body. It was almost like a dream, but the whole thing felt like it was happening in slow motion. I used to work in music and toured with this band. The guitarist Josh, the band's best friend Matt, had died a couple of years back. He always talked about the kid and seemed like a great guy. Josh always had this reoccurring dream where Matt was standing on this abandoned street, which supposedly was metaphorical for purgatory. Josh had all these conversations with Matt in these dreams, and because he had overdosed unexpectedly, he felt like his spirit was unable to move on. At the end of the dreams, Matt would take a bulb from the street light on the streets they were standing in the middle of. Josh described these dreams in extreme detail, and I could pretty much picture what the street looked like. Fast forward to about 6 months into touring with these guys. They were huge Bright Eyes fans and wanted to stop in Cassadaga, Florida. Bright Eyes singer wrote an album there, and it's a really creepy spiritual medium place. It might be worth noting that 6 out of 7 of the people I was with are all atheists. So we drive into Cassadaga around 2 or 3 a.m. and drive around. Suddenly, this big black dog comes in the middle of the road, and it just stops and looks at us. The guy in this band were weird as, and were saying things like, "Follow that dog. It's trying to show us something." And in my mind, I'm just thinking, they're all fucking idiots. We followed this dog for a few blocks, and it was walking pretty slowly. All of a sudden, we turn a street, and the dog bolts. We try to speed up, but Josh says, "Stop the fucking van, this is it." We're all confused, and he gets out of the van and looks around. This is it. This is the street in my dreams. We hang out for about 15 minutes, and from the way he described the street, from having houses on the left to a park on the right, it was definitely the street. As we get in the van, a streetlight goes off, and we just drive off. He claims he never had any more dreams about it, as that was closure on everything. My dad used to get up at around 3 a.m. every morning for work. Starting at the very early age, I would wake up on my own and wander downstairs to see him before he left. One morning, when I was about 4 years old, I made it to the bottom of the stairs and noticed that the front door was ajar. I opened it up and saw my father in his favorite work shirt, making his way down the driveway to his truck in his typical work outfit, plaid shirt and dickies. I swung the door open wide and yelled for him to come back for a hug before he left. He slowly turned around and just stared at me and started walking back toward the house. He was looking so strangely at me that it started to scare me, and I began crying and asking what was wrong. Just as he'd almost reached me, a pair of arms encircled me from behind in a bear hug. I turned my head to see my understandably freaked out father staring at his doppelganger in the same outfit. The double took one look at my dad and ran down the driveway. Meanwhile, my dad yanked me in the house and locked the door. Weirdest moment ever. Never did quite figure that one out. I would not trust my 4-year-old memory of the event if it wasn't also witnessed by my father. He won't really talk about it these days, but my mom has since told me that he called out of work and she spent the day reassuring him he wasn't a nutcase. My family owns a house in Cape Cod. The previous owner was a white supremacist with an autistic son named Jimmy. Jimmy was known for putting on a trench coat and fedora, climbing trees, and shooting cats and dogs with a BB gun. When my parents moved into the house, they found a bunch of Nazi paraphernalia in the bedroom. They put it in the shed, told the former owner they had a week to get rid of it, and then threw it out. Of course, at the age of 7, I didn't know any of this. That's when I was visited 5 nights in a row by a figure in a trench coat and fedora. He didn't have any detail. He looked like a silhouette, like he was being powerfully backlit, but with no light source. He would stand in the corner of the room or sit there crouched or sit in the bed opposite mine, my brother's bed, but he was at summer camp at the time. One time, he sat in the rocking chair, and when I looked later, he was gone, but the chair was still rocking. After a few nights of this, I told my parents about it. My mom called it a nightmare, but my dad was intrigued. He told me to tell the figure, "Jimmy, I don't have your stuff. So the next night, when the figure appeared again in the corner of the room, I said, Jimmy, I don't have your stuff. And Jimmy walked right over to me, put his face an inch away from mine, and then disappeared. I never saw him again. Years later, I found out about the history of the house. I've often wondered if I had heard it before, and somehow suppressed it, and then imagined my encounters with Jimmy. But he was, and remains, entirely vivid to me. My father died in 2008, the night before visiting his house for the first time. He appeared in my dream where he handed me a black camera in a plastic bag and specifically said, "Take the camera as I won't be needing it anymore," and I took it from him. First thing in the morning, I visited his house, where most of this stuff is already moved by my uncle, and opened one of the wardrobes, find a sealed cardboard box deep inside, rip it open with a knife and take out his black camera. Apparently my uncle missed that one and took off all the other electronics but the camera. All I can say is that this experience was a proper communication, and it significantly eased my pain knowing that someone remains after a loved one passes.